Hakadosh Boker or Masechet Batra Daf Yomi Daf Kuf Mem Bet Amud Aleph 142a1. We were talking about, right, in the Gemara as follows. We just spoke about Ihachi, if so, Diktani Seifa. Yeah? Tavilo Gemara. Gemara Sham. Ivrit. Ihachi Diktani Seifa. Yeah? He says if we learned in the Seifa, Vimama Koma Sheteled Ishti, whatever my wife gives birth to, Hareze he told she's going to take. Right? So what does that mean when it says now? Right, when he's going to be speaking about the entire concept of taking, right, he told. So therefore you should take, even if it's a tuntum. Because since the person said, whatever my wife gives birth to, so then it doesn't matter, whatever the wife gives birth to. So he says, whatever she gives birth to. So says the Gemara, so why doesn't he say, meaning when she gives birth? Which means if he said, in yalda ishti zachar, right? If my wife is going to come and have a zachar, the shetelenu yitol maneh, that he's going to take a maneh, that he wasn't going to be mizakeh to the vlad anything, right? Only kesheyeled, right? And therefore, it's not mizakeh ubar. So he comes and he says mizakeh ubar is not going to acquire anything. So answers the Gemara, Ravuna letame. Ravuna goes according to his reasonings. Tamar Ravuna, because says Ravuna, af l'chsheteled lo kana. When a person says, even when a person comes and he says, lichsheteled, when she gives birth, right? Which means you're going to be makneh to the ubar. Remember, when ubar is a fetus, and you're being makneh to the fetus, even in such a case, right? And it's going to be tachul de matana, right? That we said here, he's not going to acquire. The Amar Rav Nachman, because says Rav Nachman, hamzakel ubar, right? Lo kana. If somebody is going to be mizakeh to a ubar, he doesn't acquire it, because an ubar cannot acquire. Lichsheteled, but if he says when she gives birth to the ubar, kana, he is going to acquire. So he says, Ravuna Amar, Ravuna says, af lichsheteled lo kana, even if he says lichsheteled when it's going to give birth, lo kana. Rav Sheshat Amar, Rav Sheshat says, echad ze ve'echad ze, whether you're going to be a makneh to the ubar, al menat sheyizkeh miyad, or makneh al menat sheyizkeh when he's going to give birth, kana. So it actually comes out that there's going to be three different shitot, right? One more time. Zakel ubar lo kana. If you're going to be mizakeh to a fetus, meaning the wife is pregnant, right? It's his child. He comes and he says, I'm being mizakeh to the subar. According to Rav Nachman, lo kana. Lichsheteled, if he says when she gives birth to the subar, he is going to be koneh the fetus, right? Because now he's born. Rav Huna, no, I said there's three shitot, right? Rav Nachman. Rav Huna comes and he says, af lichsheteled, even that second case, which was lichsheteled, also lo kana. Says Rav Sheshat, the other extreme. Rav Sheshat says echad ze ve'echad ze. Whether you said mezakeh ubar or lichsheteled, kana. So Rav Sheshat is one extreme, that you're always koneh, whether you're going to be mezakeh ubar or lichsheteled when the woman gives birth, right? That's in both cases you're going to be koneh. Rav Nachman says, right? It all depends. It's like a middle ground. What does it mean, middle ground? Lichsheteled, yes. Mezakeh ubar, no. And comes Rav Huna, and he says, no. So you've got the two extremes, Rav Huna and Rav Sheshat, and Rav Nachman in the middle. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Sheshat, says Rav Sheshat, Mena amina la. How do we know this? The Tanya was learned in the Braita, Ger Shemet. Imagine you have a ger that he passed away. Ubizbezu Israel nechasav. Now the Israelim come and they take everything. Why? It's a ger. He doesn't have family members. So when he dies, who gets everything? Hefker. If it's hefker, al attack. They go, they start to running, grabbing whatever they can. And all of a sudden, shamush yesh lo ben. There's the son. Now if there's a son, they get nothing. Everything goes to the son. So whatever it doesn't help. Right? Or shaita ishto meuberet. Or the wife is pregnant. Now, if the wife is pregnant, 1 second, it's not afker. Chayavin lachzir. They have to give everything back. Hichziru hakol. What happens now? They gave everything back. Ve'achar kach shamu shemet beno o sheipil ishto. And then they found out that the son died, or right, she had a pala, so it was never really a child because she miscarried that child. Hechzik b'shniya kana uvarishona lo kana. It's a new kinyan. So therefore, let's say, for example, I grabbed the first time around, right? And you grabbed the first time, and so we grabbed. 3 of us grabbed. All of a sudden, we found out he's got a child. So if he has a child, that's it. He has to give it back. So we come, we give it back. Or we found out the wife is pregnant. Okay, come, we give it back. And she has a miscarriage, or the son dies, right? So now what happens? If the son dies, again, it's like the getter that died because there's no inheritance, right? Even if he's married. Here, it doesn't go to the wife. That's something else. Yeah? So now, right, nothing goes to the wife. That's why here we found out that only if the wife was pregnant. Because if the wife is not pregnant, nothing goes to the wife. You're still able to take all the properties. So what happens? You find out that really he's got a child. Or the wife is pregnant. So everybody comes, we all put it back in the pot. We give everything back. And all of a sudden, the son dies. Or the wife miscarriages. And now all of a sudden, 3 new people that are here on the table come and they grab it. Now I come running and say, what are you talking about? What do you grab? I already grabbed it first. No. Says the Gemara, Echzik b'shniya kana. Only the ones that did the chazakah the second time around, they were koneh. But barishona, the ones that were machzik after the death of the ger, meaning the first time around, lo kana. Why? Because basically what happens is that since it was nitbarer during the time of that chazakah, that it wasn't really a efker. Because the first time around, he did have a child. And his wife was pregnant. So therefore, since the first time around when I grabbed it, it wasn't a good grabbing. Why wasn't it a good grabbing? Because I had to give it back. So now that the person dies, only now does it start the al-atak. Only now does it start that I have to grab onto it. So therefore, the first time when I came and I grabbed onto it, it doesn't help. So says the Gemara, now one second. So now listen to the proof of Rav Sheshat. Remember, according to Rav Sheshat, it was one extreme in the spectrum. Whether you're mezaket to the ubar, or you're going to say lichsheti valid when he gives birth, you are koneh, meaning the child, the fetus, is going to be koneh. So he says, if you're going to tell me the ubar lo koneh, says Rav Sheshat, if you're going to tell me that the ubar is lo koneh, lama lelechzuke b'shniya? Why do you have to be lechzuke b'shniya? I understand the case where you found out that he had a child, he has a boy, you're right. But we had 2 cases. We had shamush yesh lo ben, or what is the or? Or another case. What's the or? Or shaita ishto meuberet. The wife was pregnant. So if right now the wife is pregnant and you're going to be mizaket to the ubar, right? Or even it's nothing. Nothing happens. So this is a proof. Says yes. So this is a proof. Says Rav Sheshat to my shita that an ubar is koneh. First of all, you could be mizaket to an ubar, and also leksheteledi is koneh. Now, why do you have to do another chazakah? You already did the first chazakah. So Amar Abaye comes. Everyone understood. One more time. What are we talking about? We had a 3-way machloket. Rav Nachman, Rav Huna, and Rav Sheshat. You have a spectrum. Rav Sheshat is on one side of the spectrum. He says you could be mizakeh to the ubar, yes, and he says you could say lichsheteled when the ubar is going to be nolad. Gam ken ze yachol alech lavlad, ve'az yelech lavlad. That's Rav Sheshat on this side of the spectrum. You have Rav Huna on the other side of the spectrum. Mizakeh ubar lo kana. And even if he said lichsheteled, gam lo kana. That's the other side of the spectrum. Yes, no. The middle of the spectrum was going to be Rav Nachman. Mizakeh ubar, no. But lichsheteled, yes. Rav Sheshat comes and he says, I'm going to bring a proof to you that you could be koneh. What's the proof? The ger that died. The ger dies. Everybody comes, they grab the properties. They find out that the wife is pregnant. Forget about now the son because it's not no ger. So the wife was pregnant. What do they all do? Boom, they bring it back. All of a sudden, she has a miscarriage. So what happens? All of a sudden, everybody goes to grab it, but different people. So now the second people are acquiring it, not the first. Now the question is why? If you're going to tell me that the ubar does not acquire anything, why is it that the second people acquire? The first people that originally came and they grabbed it. That's it. So this is Rav Sheshat. This is Rav Sheshat bringing a proof to his opinion. He says this is a proof that I'm right. Yeah, it's a proof I'm right.
There is no challenge for this halakha, this opinion.
No. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, it's incorrect. Well, wait. Yeah. Says the Gemara, Abaye now is going to try to answer up Rav Huna and Rav Nachman. One more time. This was a bomba question. Like this is a bomba proof to Rav Shashat. How do we answer up Rav Shashat? So he says, Abaye, Yerusha haba me'elea shane. This is Yerusha. It's not a regular deen of mizakel ubar or tlechsheteled shu yizakel oto. It's a Yerusha. Yerusha comes on its own. And therefore, since Yerusha comes on its own, that's why it comes without hakna'ah. Meaning, Yerusha, you don't need a kinyan. It's automatically. The father passes away, the child inherits immediately. Let's make a kinyan. Imagine a person comes, he passes away. Somebody else comes, he grabs the property. Said, excuse me, what are you doing here? Well, the children didn't do a chazakah yet. They didn't do a kinyan. A kinyan? Yerusha comes on its own. You don't need to do a kinyan. Yerusha is mimela. So says Abaye against Rav Shashat, Chazaku Baruch, I loved your proof. That's not a proof. You know why? You're talking about Yerusha. Yerusha is a different story. Right? Yeah, it's a completely different concept. So that's what he's saying. Fine. So that's one way of answering it. Abaye. Rava comes and he says, I've got another way of answering it. You know how? Shane Hatam, it's different over there. Derapuye merapian biadayu mikara. He comes and says, from the lechatchila, the chazakah and the nechasim was very, very, very weak. Why? Because when they went and they grabbed to the properties, they even had a safek whether bemet he had inheritors or not. Meaning the get died. They didn't know. They weren't sure, but they know that okay, this is a get. He's only married. They didn't know of any children. So he said, you know what? He maybe doesn't have any children. Boom, they run and they grabbed. When they grabbed, they didn't grab with a good chazakah. It was already weak. So since they didn't grab with a good chazakah, so therefore it's not considered a good chazakah. So for afterwards, when it was mitbarer that be'emet, it was a good chazakah, it's already too late. Because since the first time around, they didn't do it with 100% certainty of what's going on, so for it doesn't help. Now the question is, so therefore, what exactly happens? What is the nafkamina between Rava and Abaye? Again, one more time. Rav Shashat comes and he says, his yisod. His yisod is, Shata yachol liknot le mezakel ubar, yes, and besides mezakel ubar, also, right, lechsheteled, both of them. He brings a proof. Abaye comes and he disproves it. Yerusha. Yerusha is a different story. Yerusha comes on its own. You don't need to do nothing with Yerusha. So Yerusha is according to everybody. Lechule alma, ben according to Rav Nachman, Rav Huna, Rav Shashat, according to everybody, it goes directly to the child. You don't need a kinyan. You don't need anything. Very good. That's a very good answer. So therefore, even according to everybody, the child acquires it. Even if he's a fetus in the mother's stomach and everything that you want. First answer. That was Abaye. Second answer, Rava, when you did the first chazakah, it was a weak chazakah. Because you weren't sure, does he have children? Doesn't he have children? Does he have anybody? Does he have any family? We're not sure. So when the person came and he grabbed, he didn't do a strong chazakah. He doesn't know. He was doing it out of safek. So when he grabbed, it wasn't strong. If it wasn't strong, no. If this guy converted, and you know when he converted, and you know from the time of conversion until the time that he passed away that there was nothing, meaning everybody knows about it. There was no children, no nothing. So then, okay, fine. So then you're right. When you did the chazakah, you did it. Why? You know 100% you're getting it. But here, you weren't sure. Right? The guy comes, he moves into the city. Right? After moving into the city, right? You see him with his wife, but you don't know if they already had a child, if he's already in yeshiva, you don't know anything. You just see this guy, he's a ger, chazak baruch, and he passes away. So you went and went. But what's the difference between them? What's the practical difference between Rav and Abaye? My benayim. So says the Gemara, Ika benayu, the difference between them is, Sheshamu bo shemet, velo met, ve'achar kach met. The difference between them is, what happens in a case where they heard that the child died? Meaning, there was a child. They heard that the child died, right? But he didn't die. But he did die later on. But it was only after you went and you grabbed onto the property. Yeah? So one more time. You heard that he died, right? but he didn't, right? He didn't die actually, but he did die afterwards. So therefore, right, he comes and he says, right, according to Abaye, that he says it's a Yerusha, so therefore it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, Yerusha, it never helps. So it always goes straight down to the son. So when they grabbed onto the property, was he alive? Yes. So that's it. There's nothing more to talk about. Right? When they grabbed onto the property, it was a mistake. Because the guy was alive, it goes down Yerusha Mimela. If it goes down Yerusha Mimela, that was the answer of Abaye. There's nothing more to do. But according to Rava, when they went and they did the first chazakah, did they do it with 100% certainty? Of course they did. Why? Because they heard that he died. He didn't actually die, but they heard that he died. Meaning, if you're going to ask this guy, when they're going to come, they're going to ask this guy, did you acquire this for sure? But I thought he had a child. Well, he died. So when he went and he did the chazakah on it, it was 100% the chazakah. You're right. Later on, they found out, right? Later on, they found out that really meant no, right? That it wasn't really a chazakah, but it really meant he was alive. But the fact that he went at the time and he did 100% chazakah, according to Rava, it is a good chazakah, and therefore would be good. According to Abaye, no, it was Yerusha. Yerusha is Mimela, right? And this is what we're talking about until now, okay? So, Tashima, we're going to try to bring a proof now. Remember that we're going to try to bring a proof to do with Zechiya Ubar or not, okay? So Tashima, remember, Tashima is always bringing a proof. Tashima, come in here, come and learn. It means we're going to try to bring a proof. Tashima, Tinok ben Yom Echad, when you have a Tinok of one day, right, which means that he just was born. That's what it means, ben Yom Echad. Nochel umanchil. What does that mean? He's going to be Yoresh, the Nechasim. That's what it means, Nochel, right? He's going to be Nochel. Umanchil. And he's going to give it to other people, which means he's going to be Morish to his family members, right? If afterwards he actually died. Ben Yom Echad in Ubalo. It's mashma from here that it's only when he's born. Before birth, there's nothing there. Meaning, an Ubar does not acquire anything. He doesn't get anything. It's only when he's born. When he comes out into this world, now he's going to acquire it. Now he's going to get everything. But until then, no. So says the Gemara, answers Rav Sheshat. Now, this is a proof against Rav Sheshat. Because Rav Sheshat wanted to say that it can an ubar be koneh. You could be, yes, an ubar can be koneh. So there's a proof against him, right? You could be muzakel ubar. So says the Gemara, Hama lecha Rav Sheshat. Rav Sheshat is going to answer you, Nochel b'niksei ha'em lanchil la'achin min ha'av. V'davka ben yom echad, av la'ubar lo. He says no. This is a special case. A special case that here we're talking about, that he's being nochel, the mother's properties, to give it as a nachala to his father's family. Right? If you remember, we already mentioned, right, that when a man gets married to two different wives, so therefore the children are brothers, but they're brothers from the father. Okay? So the family from the father are the ones that inherit, that they take inheritance, not the family from the mother. Here, though, if this child is born, right, from the second wife, and now he inherits property from his mother. So it's only if he's a 1 day old child does he inherit from the mother. And now that he inherits from his mother, if he dies, he's able to transfer that to the brothers from the father. So it comes out that the father's family, meaning that the brothers from the father, are going to be inheriting property from this guy's mother, that it wasn't even their mother, had nothing to do with them, right? It was a second wife of their father, sorry, right? So that's what they're doing. He says, yeah, for sure, right? So he says, my tama, what's the reasoning? Kuf membet amubet, 142b, tehu mait bereisha, because the umbar died first. Right? The mitziyut is that the meuberet that she died, for sure the ubar will die before tzet nishmata. Ve'en ben yoresh et imo bakever lanchil la'achim minav. So therefore, a son, meaning he has to be out and then she dies. Because if she died, that means he dies, right? When the mother dies, right, and the fetus is inside, right, then the child, the fetus, is going to die. So therefore, the majority of the times. Right, you have to remember that the oxygen which is going through is based upon her oxygen. So I don't remember how many minutes, right, mamash minutes, right, that you have, that usually if the mother dies, so automatically the child will die. Right? Again, there's a few I don't remember if it's a few minutes, right? But not more than that. We're not talking about, it's not days. It's not like the mother dies, right? And things, right? I don't know the exact time. You can look it up, but I do not know. Okay. But it's usually the general rule, right? So he comes and he says, right? He comes and he says, okay, then anyway, Tosfot says that there's a difference if she dies on her own or if actually somebody kills her. Okay, fine. But he says like this. He says, he says, but a child does not inherit his mother in the keved, right? To be manchil to the brothers from the father. And because of that, so says the Gemara, the who might bereisha. Says what? The fetus always dies first. There was a story. He started kicking around 3 times and then he died. Meaning, right, that it came out that the mother died even before the ubad because he started kicking around. Amar Mor Baravashi says, Mor Baravashi, no. He says that's like the tail of the how do you call this, of the lita'ah, of the lizard, that when you come you cut it off, that it's still going to be moving around. It's dead, but it's going to be in farkeset afterwards, right? It's giving the last kicks or whatever it is, but really be'emet it's already dead. So says the Gemara, Mor bered of Yosef mishmed Rav Amar, Mor of Yosef, the name of Rabbi said, Lomar shememaet bechelek bechora. We're talking about that it's going to be memaet in the chelek of the bechora, right? Which means that when we come and he's going to take the extra portion, right? This tinok ben yomo is bishat mitata'av. So therefore, to do with din the Yerusha, there's no difference, right? That means, according to what he's trying to say is that to do with Yerusha, there's no difference. But to be with mima'et chelek bechora, there it is going to be a difference. Okay, because there it has to be a tinok ben yomo. The davka ben yom echad, aval ubar lo. Okay, so therefore, in order for a person to get a chelek bechora, there he needs to be a tinok ben yom echad. But if it's going to be only an ubar, no. But to do with Yerusha, there's no difference whether it's tinok, right? Tinok ben yomo or an ubar. Ubar will always get a Yerusha. So my tama, what's the reasoning? It says v'yaledulo. To do with the chelek bechora, it says v'yaledulo vanim. And therefore, since it says v'yaledulo vanim, it's mashma that the chelek bechora is talui beleida. It has to be v'yaledulo vanim. The Amar Mor Bereder of Yosef Mishmed Rava. Because it says more Yosef the name of Rava. Ben shenola la'achar mitat aviv. Right? What happens if this boy is born after the death of the father? Eno memaet bechelek bechora. He's not going to come and be memaet in the chelek of the bechora, right? Because it's only going to be during the time of the lifetime. My tama, what's the reason? Yaldulo amarachmana. The Torah says yaldulo banim. Veleka. Here you don't have it. So therefore, since you do not have it, because he was only born after, right, the death of the father, so therefore there's nothing, right? Fine. So he comes and he says, like this afterwards. He comes and he says like this. He says, right, in Surah they came and they taught the following. Besura matnuachi. But Pumpedita, they taught another way. What was the other way? Right? Let's see the other way around. Not from Vialedulo, from Yakir. Amar Mor Yosef Mishmed Rava, says Mor Yosef, the name of Rava. Bechor shenolad le'achar mitat aviv. Right? So for example, the father comes and he leaves the wife pregnant with Teomim. Right? And now, right, she gave birth to them. So now, 1 second, but one of them is a Bechor. Right? Or he left 2 wives pregnant. And by leaving 2 wives pregnant, they both gave birth after he died. Right? But one of them is a Bechor. So therefore, Eno notel pishnaim. He does not take pishnaim. Now the question is, why not? One of them is a Bechor. They're both his children, and one of them is a Bechor. Whether it's from the same wife and they're twins, or whether we're talking about 2 different wives, what's the difference? So Maitama, Yakira Menachmana. The Torah says that the father, Kieta Bechor Yakir, right? Kieta Bechor Ben Yakir Latelo Pishnaim. So he has to be able to be Makir, who's the Bechor? Valeta Yakir, he's there. So there's no Yakir. So therefore, he's learning it from the word Yakir. The previous one was learning it from Vialdulo, meaning the Chelek Bechora is only going to be chosen once they're born. And the fact that he died before they were born, it's not Vialdulo, because basically when he dies, that's when the Yerusha is given over. And right now, there's no Bechor, because it has to say Vialdulo. The second one, which is going to be Pumpadita, not in Syria, right, not in Surah, they're learning it. I learned it from the word of Yakir. The Hilcheta, the halacha is, Kechol Hani Lishne, like all these lishonot. That Rav Yosef said the name of Rava, which means that the person is not going to be mimayet chelek bechora unless he's going to be born right during the lifetime of the father and not an ubar, and also a bechor is not going to take pishnaim unless he's going to be born from right the father. Because if he's not going to be born before the father dies, so then it's not going to work. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yitzchak in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Hamzakel ubar lo kana. If somebody's going to be mezaket to ubar, he's not going to acquire it. Okay? Ve'im tomar mishnatenu. You have a question from our Mishnah. Because our Mishnah was talking about that a woman is pregnant, and the husband says, Im yalda zachar, if she's going to give birth to the boy, yitol kach vekach. And that's what he's going to take. So it's mashma, you could be mezaket to ubar. So hoil vedato shel adam krova etzel beno, right? The reason why is, why does it help? He says, because since a person is so close to his son, he's gomenu maknelo bechol libo, and therefore, even though he's not ba'olam, he could be maknetem. But shar ubarim, it doesn't work. Meaning, what we're trying to say now is that there's going to be a difference between your fetus and another person's fetus. If it's your own fetus, meaning the fetus that's your child, your offspring, since you've got gmirut dat, because you're so close to your own child, so therefore, even though he's not in this world, you could be mezaket to that child. But to another fetus, you cannot do such a thing. Amarle Shmuel Rav Chana Bagdata. He says Shmuel to Rav Chana, right from Baghdad. Puk aiti lebeasara. Go bring me 10 people. The Emalach b'apayu and say in front of them, Hamzakel ubar kana. You're going to be koneh. But v'ilchata, what is halacha? Hamzakel ubar lo kana. You're not going to acquire it. Right? It goes like Rabbi Yochanan that is davka b'shar ubarim. Zakel ibn ubar, he is going to be koneh. Okay? Story. Yeah, you guys love stories, so we're giving you a story. Somebody comes and he tells his wife, my nechasim are going to be given to the children that I have from you. Yeah? So imagine, the guy is a romantic guy. He comes and he says, my properties are going to go to the children that come from you. Right? Maybe he had a previous wife and other children, whatever it is. Okay, fine. What happened is that this woman, right, was not even pregnant. Right? And therefore there's nothing. Ata bere kashisha, comes beno gadol, right? That was from another wife. Elmaleh, so he tells the father, Hau gavra mai tavaleh. What's gonna happen with me? What's gonna happen with me? You come, you got married to your second wife, right? You're lovebirds now. So you come and you tell her you're gonna give her everything to the children that come from you. What happens to me? Yeah. Well, he said, what's happening to me? So Elmaleh, so he comes and he says, Zil kani. Go acquire, right? Go acquire it, right? He says it means basically the father accepted the words, and therefore he was maknelo also chelek shaveh also. So he comes and he says like this: Hanach v'dailo kanu. The ones, right? The children, right? At the beginning, for sure, we're not zochen matana. Because they were not in this world. Meaning the children that come from the second wife, she wasn't even pregnant. So since she wasn't even pregnant, nada. Hi, right? But this beno gadol, it chulak letalya imkom benaya. Does he have a chelek, right? Does he have a chelek mitzad banim, right? That he has, or not? Or let lechulak letalya imkom benaya. Or I'm not going to say that this nar has chelek with the banim. Okay, because basically when the other people are going to be yoresh, right? Are they going to take it from the father? Right or not, which means, is the father's matana to the older son, is it chal or not chal? So we're going to find out that it's going to be a machloket. Rav Avin, Rav Miyasha, Rav Yirmiyah, so it's a three-way machloket here, the Amli that they said, it chulak letalya bimkom benaya. The nan has a chelek in tzad banim that are going to come later on, because the matana was chal, and therefore after the father dies, this guy has a chelek, and he's going to divide it between the other ones. Rabbi Yavhu, Rabbi Chanina, Bar Papi, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, so it's 3 against 3. The Amni that they come and they say, let chulak l'talya b'mkom leya. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So Elmaleh Rabbi Yavhu, Rabbi Yirmiyah says Rabbi Yavhu, yeah, to remember, Rabbi Yavhu is the second group to the first group, to Rabbi Yirmiyah in the first group. So Rabbi Yavhu was the first one in the second group, and Rabbi Yirmiyah was the third one in the first group. So he says, Hilchata kavatan or Hilchata kavataychu. What's halacha like? Like me, like us, or like you guys? It was 3 against 3. So one in the second group comes and he tells one of the first group, who's halacha like? Like you guys or like us? So Elmaleh, Rabbi Yirmiyah tells him, Pshita dilchata kavatan. Pashuta dalacha is like us. Yeah, why? Tekashisha minaychu, right? Because we are elderly, right? Velav ilchata kavataychu, and dalacha is not like you. The dargehatun, because you guys are still children. Yeah, Elmaleh, so he told him, Nide bekashishuta talyaminta. He says, what? It depends on age. Yeah, you're gonna see who has a grayer beard. That's what it depends on. Betama talyaminta. Everything has to do with tamim, right? The reasonings behind it. Betama mai. Now, what's the reasoning behind it? Right? So he says, Zile gabed Rabbi Avin, go to Rabbi Avin. That's Biralti Nahaleh. He's going to explain it to you. Remember, Rabbi Avin was the first one of the first group. So the third one of the first group, which was Rabbi Yirmiyah, sends Rabbi Avhu, which is the first one of the second group, to Rabbi Avin, that he's going to explain the reasoning. The Karkish Bareisha b'midrasha, and he comes and he agreed in the Bet Midrash. Azel Gabe, he went to Rabbi Yirmiyah to Rabbi Avin, Elmaleh, and he told him, Kufman Gimel on the top, yeah, right? Ilu Elmaleh keneka chamor. He says, Mikani. He says, I'm going to ask you a question. If he's going to tell this child, right, you're going to remember, this is the older child coming to the father and saying, Papa, what's going on? What about me? What? I got nothing. And he's going to tell him, acquire like a chamor. Yeah, acquire like a chamor. Does he acquire anything? For sure not. Which means the father comes and he's being makneh to him, right? Just like he's koneh to a chamor. The chamor is not koneh. So for sure the son is not koneh. The same thing here. When the father comes and he tells the older son, right, that listen, you're going to acquire with the other children which are going to be born, he says, Ena banim atidim konim. They're not going to acquire because they weren't here. So he also is not acquiring. So therefore it's nothing. So nothing happens. Okay?